Daufuskie Island, a place only accessible by ferry that is located in the heart of the Lowcountry. Only 533 people live on this island, but this doesn't mean that it isn't the site where unique history has unfolded. So join us as we uncover the history of Daufuskie Island during the Reconstruction era of 1861 to 1900. To understand the history of Daufuskie Island during the Reconstruction era, it is important to travel back to the 1820s, when West African slaves were brought to Daufuskie to work on cotton fields. These slaves were called the Gullah people, and these people spoke the only African Creole language in the entire U.S. By the 1860s, there were 7 plantations on Daufuskie, though some say there were 11. During the Civil War, the Union wanted to seize Fort Pulaski to cut off the Savannah River supply chain that the Confederates had, and the Union saw Daufuskie as a strategic location to execute this. So, in January of 1862, the Union placed troops on Daufuskie, and with the Confiscation Acts of 1861 and 1862, all property on Daufuskie was seized by the Union, and the plantation owners and slaves alike were forced to leave. After the Civil War ended in April of 1865, Daufuskie plantations were sold at auction by U.S. tax commissioners on Hilton Head, and the previous plantation owners redeemed all properties but the Dunn and Webb tracts. Emancipated slaves would also return to Daufuskie in 1865, and with this came the return of the Gullah language and culture. These emancipated slaves were deeded or purchased more than 100 lots of land between 2 and 15 acres by 1884 on the Dunn, Merrifield, Benjies Point, and Cooper River plantations. One significant purchase of land came in the early 1880s when John Stoddard, a plantation owner, sold 12 acres of the Merrifield plantation to freed slaves so that a church and cemetery could be built. What would result was the construction of the first Union African Baptist Church in 1881, and having been rebuilt in 1885, it is the oldest structure on Daufuskie today. As for education on Daufuskie during the Reconstruction era, it took off when John Stoddard, who was the owner of Melrose Plantation, returned to reclaim his property in 1866. When he returned, he signed contracts with his former slaves for labor and reserved a building for their school. The American Missionary Association then assigned Esther W. Douglas of Vermont and Francis A. Littlefield of Maine to teach freedmen on Daufuskie's Melrose Plantation in 1867. When Douglas and Littlefield arrived, they taught from 42 to 85 pupils. On April 11th of 1867, Eliza Ann Solomons, who was a teacher on Hilton Head, visited Douglas and Littlefield and commented that the two were the only white people she saw on the entire island. Solomons also stated that Melrose Plantation's gardens were very beautiful, with many unique flowers. If you ever visit Daufuskie today, you might notice a lighthouse on the northern tip. This is because, in the 1870s, Congress passed an act that provided for the building of 2 lighthouses on Daufuskie, the Hague Point Lighthouse, which still stands today, and the Bloody Point Lighthouse. During the same time period, white families moved to the island to be sharecroppers, with some ending up as lighthouse keepers. Concerning industry on Daufuskie, oyster canning would emerge as the primary one in 1883, when L.P. Maggioni & Co. opened an oyster factory there. The laborers in this industry included many Gullah men and women, especially between 1893 and 1903. In 1895, South Carolina's state constitution mandated public school segregation. In the following year, the Supreme Court ruled it constitutional to racially segregate in public spaces. However, on Daufuskie, the only public spaces were its schools. So, outside of its schools, there were no signs of forced racial segregation. The effects of the return of the Gullah people to Daufuskie during the Reconstruction era can still be seen today. For example, the shutters of the windows on some homes are painted what the Gullah people call heaven blue to prevent evil spirits from entering the house. Also, many Gullah cemeteries are located close to moving water, so that the deceased souls could return to Africa. Some notable cemeteries include the Cooper River Cemetery and the Mary Field Cemetery.
The following quotes can be attributed to the Daufuskie residents. With these words, we can see the true fabric of the community and where the past has influenced the present. If you are really interested in making government work, you should have the experience of working in government. Jennifer Polk. But I still feel my ancestors' spirits all the time. I know they're the ones who guided me back home. Sally Ann Robinson. The Gullah Gospel is a rich and profound story. The island has seen so much change throughout the years, but in that change, the residents have found strength in the community.